Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be doing my review of Once Upon a Time, Episode 2. So kind of where I left off in the last review, because I'm going to kind of bring that up in this review. But I did state, I think, in the video that what Henry's involvement was with Storybrooke and everything, and how does he know everything about the comic, not the comic, but the book and everything. How does he know everything? So that thought came into play into this episode. So I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. So what I'm actually going to do after viewing this episode is I see that how these episodes are probably structured is they have a storyline in Storybrooke, they have a storyline in a fantasy world, and somehow they kind of blend together, kind of like how, in a way, kind of like how Lost did. So since we got two different storylines, that's probably how they're going to be structuring each episode. So how I'm going to go over Storybrooke's storyline, and then I'm going to go over the fantasy storyline. So for this, when we start off in Storybrooke, we have Emma, and she has decided to actually stay there for longer. So I can't remember what, I'll just call her Wicked Witch. So her name is actually Regina. I actually had to look it up. But, well, yeah, I know her name is Regina, and she's the mayor. I think she's the mayor of Storybrooke from what I could tell. So Regina doesn't want Emma around. She doesn't like that she's hanging around Henry all the time, and she sees it as kind of a threat. So there's a couple situations in Storybrooke where she tries to just show her that she's the one at power. So there's a couple situations where she's actually meeting up with Henry, and they're walking down the street, and he tells her a little bit, some pages in the book that Regina doesn't have, that he ripped out of the book. So he doesn't want her to see those pages because Henry believes that if Regina finds out that Emma is Snow White's kid, that it would change things. So he tries to hide that fact to her, and Henry gives them a code name, which is Code Cobra, which is just a code name between the two of them. So there's a couple situations where Regina, tries to be at power here, and there's a couple instances where she goes to the shrink, which is, she gets in trouble over there with the shrink because the shrink is then communicating with Regina, and ends up getting her in trouble, ends up getting her arrested. Have to do a lot more things than just a couple arrests to stop me. So, and I forget who Regina talks to, but they kind of talk some sense into her and tell her that the two of them are just going to go back and forth between this thing, and it's just going to get worse for Henry. So eventually Regina stops this whole harassing Emma. They do open up to where Emma does kind of admit to Henry about the book that he has, and how he believes everybody in the town is connected to the fantasy world. So Henry actually walks in at the time when she says she doesn't believe him, and Henry actually believes that she thinks that he doesn't believe her for everything that he's told her about the book. So kind of some things other than that drama in the Storybrooke storyline. There were a couple other things that went on, like the moment when Henry is explaining the book to Emma a little bit more, and she runs into Snow White, which Snow White, at that time she doesn't realize that Snow White is her mother. So in this episode, it's kind of you know, Regina does back off by the end, but we don't really know if Emma believes in Henry and this whole story about Storybrooke. So she could probably be just doing this to. I don't know whose side she's actually on right now. She's probably on Henry's side, even though she doesn't. It's probably about 50-50 on the whole thing. But she wants to believe in Henry because Henry is technically her son. So that's really all. The scene between Emma and Snow White is actually that Snow White is her mother, because she didn't realize that before. So you have that, and then there's a relationship between the two of them. It's kind of like the same relationship between Emma and Henry. They have the same relationships between Emma and Snow White, because something about the situation, they all just trust each other, because, you know, in reality, you know, Henry is Emma's son and Emma is Snow White's daughter. So kind of the three of them have a core little bond relationship going there. So anyway, that's really all that really happened in the Storybrooke storyline. We have the drama between Regina and Emma. Something tells me that that's just going to keep going on. And we have kind of the relationship between Henry and Emma, which mother-son type relationship. She wants to trust him, and you know, he's really the only reason why she's in that town. And then you got the storyline between Emma and Snow White. So those are kind of the core relationships there that we're exploring right now. In Storybrooke we have just a mother-daughter relationship and a mother-son relationship. So that's important. So what I want to kind of go over, maybe I'll talk about this in my final thoughts. So right now, I'm going to go over to the fantasy storyline right now. And what's going on in the fantasy storyline is the Wicked Witch, the Wicked Witch is actually, we're learning more about the curse. There's a couple characters that are in fantasy world that I haven't seen in the Storybrooke, and there's a couple characters in Storybrooke that I haven't seen in fantasy world. So they have a scene between the Wicked Witch and Maleficent. And other than that, we have the Wicked Witch, which is trying to conjure the spell. So she tries to do the curse. And the curse fails, probably because one of the elements in the curse is she got the heart of, I think like a horse or something, and that didn't work. So she gets mad and she turns one of her helpers into stone, which he's actually in stone in the in Storybrooke, which is kind of fast. It's weird how everything is intertwined here. So the spell doesn't work, so she goes to Rumpelstiltskin to make a deal with him. Everybody makes a deal with Rumpelstiltskin. And what he tells her is what made the spell not work, what made the curse not work, is the heart. That she needed a heart to somebody that she cares about. So Rumpelstiltskin knows everything, I guess. So she has to kill. She has to get the heart of somebody that she cares about. It's actually there's one person in the fantasy world that she cares about, and that's that elderly person that was in the beginning of it. It turns out this elderly person is her father. So they have a nice talk and everything, but she ended up getting his heart out, and she kills him. She kills her father in fantasy world to make the spell work. So at the end of this episode, she does the curse, and I think she does the curse, and the curse it works. I don't remember her doing it again, but supposedly it worked because, you know, everybody in Storybrooke is, obviously the curse worked. So the big twist in this episode, and this threw me, this made me confused the first time that I watched it, because, you know, I watched the first like 3 episodes, but watching this episode reminded me of this cliffhanger, and I forgot all about it. But it turns out that in Fantasy World, her father's name is Henry. So what I said in the previous episode were how does Henry know everything? How's he involved with everything? What I tend to forget is everybody that's in Storybrooke is also a character in the fantasy world, and we didn't see his character yet in the fantasy world, which kind of, when I watched it before, kind of made me confused, because in fantasy world, her father's name is Henry, and she killed him to make the cure work. But in Storybrooke, Henry is her son. So that kind of confused me, how the age thing, on how Henry's a little boy, and in Storybrooke, Henry is her son, but in Fantasy World, he's her father. So I don't know how that ties in together. It kind of confused me when I first watched it. And I hope it's explained a little better about how it's explained on how he's younger in Storybrooke, but he's older in the fantasy world. So that, when I watched that before, it kind of confused me. So that kind of I think that's what made me stop watching it, because I kind of had to absorb everything. But that's the twist in this episode, is her father is actually Henry in Fantasy World, and in Storybrooke, it's her adopted son. So I don't know how this is all going to play out. What I liked about this episode was that twist. I also liked the relationship between Emma and Henry, and I also liked the relationship between Snow White and Emma. I don't know how I feel about the relationship going between Emma and Regina. I guess that's going to be a theme going on this season. But what my predictions, let me go to predictions here real quick. I don't think that Regina or the Wicked Witch are as bad as a character as they're being played out. I do believe that there's going to be a bigger villain coming along that's going to be worse than the Wicked Witch. But I believe for right now there's going to be drama, and she's pretty much the bad villain right now. And I think Rumpelstiltskin and the Wicked Witch are getting the villain theme right now. Some other things that I took notice were that there were some characters in Storybrooke that are not yet in the fantasy world. So there is a scene between Regina and I can't catch our name yet. But the actor looked very familiar to me, because I think he was the guy in the Breaking Bad. He was the main villain guy in Breaking Bad, like season 3, season 4. Those are really my thoughts on this episode. I do think that every episode is kind of driving the story a little bit more. So we're getting a little bit more in Storybrooke, and we're getting a little bit more in fantasy. But somehow this all ties together. So anyway, that is just my reaction. This is my review on the second episode of Once Upon a Time. Stay tuned for next week, and I will be going over episode 3 of Once Upon a Time. If you guys like this review, particularly if you like this series that I'm doing, make sure you hit the like button. That will ensure that in the future I make more reactions and reviews towards this show. Other than that, guys, stay tuned for more videos, and I'll see you in future reactions and reviews.